I'm talking about vegetarianism in the Muslim world, but I will also talk about veganism. But because that is a broader term, I chose for shortness vegetarianism. I'm not used to the 10-minute schedule, so I'm trying to, maybe I'm a little bit too fast or too slow. There's a lot to talk about, and yeah, I should speed up. So I guess the problem itself is quite clear to everyone in more or less detail. So part of the climate crisis is also caused by animal husbandry. So greenhouse gas emissions come also from animals. Let's say, most problematic would be cows. And so when I'm talking about meat, specifically about meat, in essence, I also talk about dairy products and eggs. They, in lesser extent, no, a problem, but still a problem. So, and besides the climate, that's just the peak of the mountain. Of course, destruction of ecosystem, animal cruelty connected with it, cruelty against animals connected with this, civilizational diseases, health problems, so on and forth. So, and when we have a look at existing consumption patterns, so a lot of poor people in history, as nowadays, don't have much opportunity to eat meat or drink milk, milk products, and so on and so forth. But with an increasing income, of course, that is possible. And so we have here also a kind of dilemma. So we want to get people out of poverty. We want, therefore, to have a certain economic growth per capita. But that might, according to the existing consumption patterns, be counterproductive for climate action. So simple solution would be, let's all be vegetarians. For example, I'm already since 30 and more years a vegetarian, but I'm nevertheless, of course, trying to be quite neutral in my presentation. No, just where you know where my position is in that sphere, in that frame. And other solutions would also be, of course, to eat considerably less meat and dairy products and eggs and so on. That would also be enough, of course, for the solving of the, or partially solving of the climate crisis. So it's not just about hothouse gases from our burning of coal and petrol. It's also about animal husbandry. Now, Muslims are now around about 2 billion people in the world, and so a considerable part of the population, and therefore they are also distributed all over the world. So in, of course, Muslim majority countries, but also as diaspora in all other countries. And so they are, on the one hand, part of the problem causing climate change in different ways. And they are, of course, also in some of the poorest countries in the Sahel zone and other parts where the suffering takes, or the first suffering takes place, no, from climate change. Now, to give you an impression about how economic prosperity and meat consumption is connected, here I have a small table. Maybe I should even increase the screen if that is possible. So the world average of the sum of consumption of beef, sheep, poultry, and pork would be around about 33.3 kilogram in 2021. And in the OECD, which is, of course, in average richer than the world average, it's already 17.8 kilogram. I included here pork because if we are comparing with different countries and regions, that's of course also important. While in Muslim countries, we expect something close to zero, or that just minorities eat pork. No? So how's about Muslim countries? So a country like Indonesia, between 11 and 12 kilogram, quite low. Let's look for somehow more prosperous countries. Iran, 33, Turkey, 33 kilogram. There we are already at the world average. And if we are looking for the richer countries like Saudi Arabia, 43 kilogram, Malaysia, here in that list, it's just a small, and I couldn't get data for all countries. No? It's 61 kilogram. So you see the trend where it goes to. I have to add that, of course, a lot of meat which Muslims are eating as poultry, which has less climate effect than beef, for example. But nevertheless, I mean, a lot of other problems are the same. So that is a problem description. So, and now I'm probably, no, sorry, got it wrong. So what is the position now of Muslim culture, and or we could also say Muslim cultures and Islamic interpretations to meat consumption? And because religious rules and values have an effect on consumption patterns, so that should be observed. So a traditional interpretation would be that consuming meat is okay as long as it is halal. Halal means it has to commit to certain conditions, no? And most important is in slaughtering of a live animal. You cannot eat a carcass. Of course, it shouldn't be pork. It shouldn't be. You shouldn't consume blood, and so on and so forth. There are certain conditions, but when you apply these conditions, then it's okay, and that is based on several Quranic verses, on the tradition of the Prophet who ate himself meat, the tradition of the animal sacrifice at the Eid al-Adha, so that is directly translated, the Feast of Sacrifice, and the theological positions which were developed on these precedences, on these sources. And one could even say that from such a traditional point of view, forbidding eating meat would be wrong, because that would be against God's revelation in Quran and ahadith. Ahadith are the sayings and was the traditions from the Prophet, where other people are telling what he has said and what he has done outside the Quran. Okay, but at the same time, that's very important to say, as there's a strong tradition of compassion with animals. As a simple thing is, for example, when an animal is slaughtered, it should be slaughtered in a correct way with a sharp knife. So it should be fast and as good as possible. But still, I would say it's not a pleasant experience for the animal. Then there's a call for moderation. By the way, the compassion with animal is also for street animals, dogs, cats, and so on. And we have also a lot of traditions, prophetic traditions, and also of his companions, which are pointing to that. Now in Sufism, so that is Islamic mysticism, you have also a tendency to avoid meat and animal fat. The explanation for that is that people at that time were concerned that these animal ingredients will nourish your animalistic part of your soul and then lead to worldly desires, and that's not good. So for spiritual development, you should try to avoid meat and animal fat. While that is probably as examples, quite interesting for vegetarians nowadays, obviously the type of argumentation is not what mainstream nowadays society would really consider. So as a conclusion, in history, while vegetarian was not unknown in the Islamic history and in the Muslim world in the past, it was also not a common practice. And it was, for example, a practice among some Sufis, so mysticists, in India. But that makes it also suspect for other who are criticizing these Sufis or other ascets because they are too close to Buddhist and Hindu traditions. So that was a historical part. In nowadays, we see in the Muslim world, in Muslim countries, but also in the Muslim diaspora, vegetarianism and veganism are growing, but on a small scale. Still a small minority, but there are also at some parts of the world vibrant groups of activists, vegan activists. And some of them might be non-religious, so we could say culturally postmodern, post-industrial people. Others define themselves specifically as Muslim vegetarians and vegans, and they defend and defend their view again by reinterpreting Quranic verses and traditions. And they are emphasizing principles like compassion and responsibility, which is, of course, also available in the traditional interpretation, but is a kind of balance. Now, so what are you emphasizing? And they are emphasizing the principles, these principles. So, and as a fallback line is of Muslim vegetarians, there's no Islamic obligation to eat meat. And an interpretation that slaughtering and eating animals is was only allowed by necessity, and with a changing agriculture, world trade, and so on, it's nowadays not necessary to eat meat. You can be vegetarian or vegan, and it's even more healthy. No? And in some authors, in specific interpretations, also interprets the animal sacrifice. No? It's a Eid al-Adha. It is giving thanks for sustenance. But if meat is not a necessary sustenance anymore, but even rather a burden for your health, then it's also not necessary to make an animal sacrifice. Such a type of interpretations are available. And in addition to that, considering the cruelty against animals in factory farming and the destructive effects on the environment, they are proposing that the valid Islamic food choice is vegetarianism or veganism. Now, the mainstream scholars are also answering to that, of course, or not of course, but not accepting it. No? That is not, let's say, what at the moment mainstream scholar would say. What is their opinion? Their opinion is that a vegetarian diet as a personal choice, a health choice, an environmental choice is okay. But if you are proposing that is better, you are morally, spiritually better than us meat eaters, then that is not okay. And also to question the animal sacrifice at the feast days would also be out of the question. Now we have also to consider that Islamic discourses are very diverse. So there's also a phenomenon of the halal economy, halal food. So food and food trade according to Islamic traditional law. And it is big business. And within that area, when we talk about halal food, most authors are concentrating on the conditions of slaughter. If the stunning is good or not, or is it allowed or not, these type of things. And to avoid contaminations, for example, some pork here or wrongly slaughtered animal products there within your food chain could make the whole food chain haram. Haram means forbidden. So there we don't see much concern about the broader picture of environment, climate change, and also the living conditions of animals, which have changed considerably in historical time. And in compared also to Islamic finance, I would state that there is somehow a coalition between meat industry and meat producers and a certain kind of ulama, which are Islamic law scholars, or Islamic scholars, fuqaha, Islamic law scholars, which are very necessary to give Islamic, certificates that the product is halal or not. So there's also a combination of ideology, let's say, between argument and economic interest. Going on, and
can I just say you've got about 2 or 3 minutes of the 20. Thanks.
That's good. Oh, of the 20. Oh, sorry for that. So I guess I can skip that. Or no, I just point out Islamic vegetarianism. They are pointing out human stewardship and compassion for animals, very important for them. From my point of view, we are all confronted with a free rider problem. So to do the necessary things to save the climate, you have a free rider problem. Within Islamic thought, Fardal Kifaya communal obligation could be a solution, and that is also proposed in some articles, because everyone has obligation to do something if such a goal is not achieved, a goal of Fard Kifaya, of communal obligation. And just a very short window, with the development of alternative proteins like cultured meat, a new discussion is opened. It could also be a solution to some of the problems, but we have still that paradox that, again, some traditional law scholars would say, well, at least the donor animal has to be slaughtered halal. You cannot take, even if it's in a very humane way, cells from a living animal. Okay, thank you.